Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. St. Lucia's first responders are crying out for the amount of pressure they feel from escalating crime there. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Tuesday, 29th November 2022. Details when we return.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. First responders of the St. Lucia Fire Service and the Royal St. Lucia Police Force warn that the recent violent crime rate is taking a psychological toll on personnel. Solange Alfred of HTS News Force reports.
An exacting toll has been brought to bear on first responders of both the law enforcement and emergency services, who are often first on the scene of gruesome incidents and are tasked with administering aid to injured victims and consoling grieving loved ones.
It's taken a tremendous toll on our officers. As you may well know, the numbers in terms of the manpower is not really where we want it to be at this juncture, but those officers that we have on duty are really stretched thin, and it's taking a toll on our officers.
The mental health of police officers is always an issue, and we have certain things in place to assist officers but more can be done.
For the men and women of law enforcement, there has been headway in some criminal investigations, but the spate of violent crimes, like homicides, persist. Police Welfare Association Vice President Azariah Faswa is aware of the calls from certain circles for a return of something akin to the ill-fated Operation Restore Confidence. The crackdown was a tactical success, but a strategic blunder, which had dire consequences for the RSLPF and its human rights record.
Well, Operation Restore Confidence had its purpose and it worked out well, so we have plans in place and we'll be working with those plans.
Faswa advises that fellow officers remain on guard to protect themselves and the citizenry.
Be more vigilant, be on the alert, support each another. We know the time is getting tough. Crime is on the rise. There's a surge in homicides and robberies and burglaries. So be on the lookout and let us continue working towards that strategy we have in place for the Christmas.
Assistant Divisional Officer in the St. Lucia Fire Service, Jermaine William, says the department has shored up its psychosocial support services to help first responders cope with the stress of the traumatic crime scenes.
We have recognized that, and as such we are in the process of putting additional measures in place to deal with the psychological effects that such responses have on our officers. So we have moved from a case-by-case basis to a situation where we have a continuous assessment of those officers in question, because we understand that the effects may not only be short-term but permanent as well.
Both institutions say personnel are being stretched beyond their limits, warning that the current state of play requires urgent attention as the nation grapples over the past 6 years with unprecedented violent crime rates, which began with the 60 homicides recorded back in 2017. Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
In the meantime, representatives of the hospitality industry in St. Lucia say they are working with civil society to effect positive change in the fight against rising crime, which is affecting the entire region. HTS's Solage Alfred again has more.
Chief Executive Officer of the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association, Nurani Aziz, concedes there is a region-wide crime wave.
Well, as an SLHTA, we have been looking at the regrettable increase in crime and violence across the region. A number of destinations are struggling with that issue right now.
According to Aziz, conversations with regional tourism stakeholders resulted in an invitation to participate in a panel discussion on the hospitality sector's contributions to the fight against crime.
It is something that plagues us, but while much is being touted regarding short-term stopgap measures which need to be employed, as a country, we cannot continue to ignore the developmental issues surrounding the environment that harbors and gives rise to that type of mindset. We have to take a more structured reflection on matters relating to, our homes.
Aziz claims that the SLHTA works actively with civil society organizations to nurture more law-abiding and well-adjusted members of society.
We've mapped out a significant number of projects which we are hoping in collaboration with organizations like the Citizens for Peace and Prosperity, Planned Parenthood Association, and about 20 other agencies to look at various programs that we can conduct and apply at a community level to help rebuild those structures and re-engineer the change that we need to see happening at a community level.
While the Tourism Insider applauds the stopgap measures curtailing increasing crime, Aziz is looking for a fundamental shift that will last for decades.
The state of urgency and the situation that is going on right now, what is taking place, brings no one any comfort. But while I appreciate the short-term interventions which are critical by the relevant authorities, the fact is we have to adopt a more developmental intervention if we are to create a safer and more sustainable St. Lucia for our kids a decade from now.
Solage Alfred, HTS News Force.
And still on more crime, this time turning our attention to Port of Spain, Trinidad. Member of Parliament for Barataria, San Juan, Saddam Hussein, has urged the government to utilize technology, manage human resources, use proper intelligence, improve the criminal justice system, among other things, to improve the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. He was contributing to the debate on a private motion by the opposition, condemning the government for its alleged failure to address serious levels of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. TTT News has more.
And as crime continues to top the headlines, Member of Parliament for Barataria San Juan, Saddam Hussein, is urging the government to utilize technology, manage human resources, use proper intelligence, improve the criminal justice system, among other things, to improve the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. He was contributing to debate on a private motion by the opposition, condemning the government for its alleged failure to address serious levels of crime in Trinidad and Tobago.
Madam Speaker, for the year 2021, we had 448 reported murders. Out of that 448, 49 murders were detected. Unacceptable. 2020, 393 murders, 57 detected. 2019, 536 murders, 42 detected. That is totally unacceptable. Criminals are running freely on the streets because there is no consequences for their action.
In response, Minister of National Security Fitzgerald Hines said 25 murder charges were laid in the last month. He said officers within the cold case unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service are working towards solving a number of crimes.
Cases that might have been there for 15, 20 years unsolved. And they are dealing with these cases, re-interviewing people, checking up on witnesses again, checking up on suspects, using most of all the modern methods, the scientific methods, as I have just told you, ballistics, DNA, the biological techniques. And they have been solving these murders. That didn't happen between 2010 and 2015. That is happening now.
On the same subject, this time turning our attention to Jamaica. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says if the government of Jamaica deems it necessary to call for another state of emergency, it will. However, he admits this will be a sensitive situation. He will explore if the circumstances give rise to it. Nika Lewis of CVM Live has more.
The Prime Minister, in response to calls for more imposition of SOEs given the lack of opposition support for the extension of the measure, told his central executive members.
The question has been asked, why not call another state of public emergency? That has to be considered carefully. I would say it is not off the table, but we will consider it very carefully. If circumstances give rise to it, if we see that our resources are stretched, if we see a spike occurring, if action is taken or threatened to be taken that will substantially create a threat to public order and life, this government will act to save lives.
He also refuted claims that the opposition was given the regulations late, forming part of the reason for them not supporting the latest SOE extension. Prime Minister Holness also explains that several concerns raised about human rights breaches didn't apply to the current or latest SOEs. Hence, he says,
based upon happenings, I have to wonder whether or not the opposition has interest of the country at heart.
Holness says the latest crime-fighting measure has yielded much fruit, reducing murders from nearly 40 per week to around a dozen.
In this current state of public emergency, there is no question that we have been, with a few days, successful, bringing murders down in a week to 12, which would be the lowest since 2015. I'm awaiting the statistics for this week. As soon as I get them, I will pass them on.
The SOEs now in effect end Monday midnight. Nika Lewis, CVM Live.
In a more pleasant news item out of Jamaica, Tourism Minister there Edmund Bartlett says there is room for healthy living in the tourism sector. As he anticipates the creation of more rooms and hotels to house tourists, he says the demand for health and wellness services will increase in the coming months and will be profitable to the sector. Details in this CVM Live News report.
More praises for Jamaica's tourism. While delivering the keynote address at the Jamaica Health and Wellness Tourism Conference, Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett says the ministries are focused on combining their efforts. This, as the minister stresses the importance of incorporating healthy habits into the tourism sector to attract more families and promote healthier living. He says the growth of the country's economy can be credited to tourism, Jamaica's leading industry.
Even in this last report, we grew in terms of the quarter by 29%, which is perhaps 3-4 times that of all other sectors in terms of growth. And for the year to date, ending October, we have grown 55%.
Minister Bartlett notes that growth is due to Jamaica's response to the high demand of tourists, adding Jamaica's high biodiversity is another asset that improves the tourists' attraction to the country.
Because with our wonderful variety of plants and the array of herbs and possibilities that exist for both cosmeceutical and nutraceutical values, Jamaica has an enormous opportunity to move forward. Plants that we look at and walk and say, what is that? Are huge in demand for health reasons.
This as he distances himself from the belief that tourism is solely hotel-based. Minister Bartlett instead says consumption is the driving force of the sector.
And what COVID has done is to emphasize the importance of health and wellness. And so more families are now going to countries and destinations that have health security. More families are now going to countries where they believe they can recover from COVID itself.
He remains resolute that more farmers should be included in the tourism sector. Nasika Aliman reporting for CVM Live.
Roberts is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start Start shopping now at hubbartshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.